Oh, okay, cool. Alrighty. Take my mask off at the podium and at the podium only. Hello, everybody. My name is Colin Nygren, and I am the current speaker of the Senate within Student Government Association. I am a former senator, caucus chair, legislative affairs director, vice president, and president of the student body. President Shader is fortunate enough to have been elected by the student body. I didn't quite get that opportunity. They are also, both Will and Julia, lucky to be back in person. The State of the Student Body Address typically announces the goals of the current administration, accomplishing those goals, and what else they have done throughout the academic year. Coming back from the challenges of COVID-19 and how the pandemic affected us, I'd like to say that I am pretty confident in this year's administration, and I am looking forward to the future of UWSP. I do not have much to say, but I know that Will is very happy to be here. President Shader is very happy to be here, back in person, and to give this announcement. I believe next following me is Narissa Nelson, but Chair Nelson does not appear to be here, so I suppose that leaves Chancellor Gibson. So Chancellor Gibson, you're more than welcome to come up here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It is so good to be with each of you this evening. I would like to thank President Shader for allowing me the opportunity to share in the State of the Student Body Address and offer a few remarks. As many of you are aware, I'm your Chancellor, Dr. Tom Gibson, and I joined the institution January of this year, approximately about 9 months ago, but I was appointed last fall. And I remember, just like yesterday, the day that I arrived on campus on January the 11th. It was a cold day in January. It appeared to, and folks shared with me that that was actually mild for this year. That's what I was told. And the campus was rather desolate. There wasn't a lot of folks around. So from that day on, I dreamed and I wished for this day. I didn't quite know when it would be, but I knew that I needed to experience an in-person university experience. I needed to experience the energy, the vibrancy of this campus. So I thank each of you for your contributions to the vibrancy of UWSP. When I was appointed, I talked about my strategic imperatives for the institution. I talked about 3 imperatives that I really believed would move the institution forward with good momentum. And that first imperative is academic excellence. And that really speaks to continuing to ensure that UWSP provides a vibrant and dynamic in-classroom and out, as well as an out-of-classroom experience. It's the reason for why we exist. Is central to the mission of the institution. And our faculty and our staff are committed to pursuing academic excellence to ensure the success of each of you. That second imperative is inclusive excellence. That largely speaks to the work that the institution has done and will continue to do to ensure UW-Stevens Point is the type of institution where folks feel valued, supported, welcomed, a place where we can truly say that we feel a sense of belonging. UW-Stevens Point also aspires to be a place where we can attract and recruit a dynamic, diverse group of students and faculty and staff at the institution. These are some of the things, again, that I believe will serve the institution well. That third and final imperative is enrollment and growth. And this is largely about the need that the institution will need to pursue to ensure that we are attracting a greater number of students across different student segments and populations to the institution. We need to be thinking about how we attract non-traditional students, how we attract post-traditional or adult student learners at the institution, how we're attracting students from new markets that can help bolster our enrollment. These are the three imperatives that, again, will serve as the frame for our strategic plan and our pursuits at the institution. These are heavy and bold initiatives, and I can't do this and pursue these imperatives alone. So I invite each of your partnership in this work to ensure that we are an institution that each of you can feel proud of. You know, I often like to say that I do not want any of you to simply attend college. I need you to experience college. And you experience college by getting involved, by being engaged with the life of this institution, and by being focused on the future of this institution. I need each of you to continue in your roles in governance and other leadership positions on campus. I need you to partner with us as the leadership of the institution as we seek ways to ensure that more students succeed. I certainly thank each of you for your service. Without your partnership, this institution would certainly be a different space and place for many. So, President Shader, thank you again. I'm appreciative for the opportunity to offer some brief remarks, and I look forward to learning about your platform goals for your administration. And again, I wish each of you a wonderful and great academic year. And I believe that Common Council Chair Narissa Nelson will be speaking next.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Good evening. I'm Narissa Nelson. I am the current chair of the Common Council body, which is the shared governance body of faculty and staff from all three of the campuses. As I mentioned at the Chancellor's State of the University address, I believe that the key to successful shared governance is open and transparent communication, listening, and seeking input from all campus stakeholders, which includes the partnership and commitment of SGA. If done right, shared governance strengthens leadership and moves the campus forward in a shared, purpose-driven way. I've been thinking about this a little bit, and one of the things is that we often don't have time to actually sit down and discuss ideas or what we want to accomplish together. We tend to be sort of task-driven or driven by an agenda, and there's very little opportunity to sometimes think aloud. Related to this is how we make connections. And I believe that these types of conversations is how we actually make connections and more than just an agenda. I think that student success is really about connections, and those connections that you make in college with your peers, your instructors, your coaches, your advisors, hall directors, and others along the path that help you form a community are all critical. I really felt that sense of communication and connection actually last week when I attended your SGA meeting. I found it to be a very welcoming and open atmosphere, and there were newly elected senators. I don't know if they're here tonight. There you are. Oh, all in a row. But I really appreciated listening to your speeches and the Q&A afterwards, and it just, again, it felt like a welcome and a really opening environment. And it sort of made me wish for a moment that I was your age. It kind of brought together, again, the idea of that experience of those new and exciting connections that you make as you embark or continue in your academic life here. And it reminded me to tell those who are my age that we could use a little bit of that positivity and hope. So just a reminder for all of us that are, I don't know how to say this correctly, but of a certain age. So my push to faculty and staff this year will be to grow those connections by attending more SGA meetings, to understand and learn more about what you are all working on, how you're structured, what goals you have, and how we might work collectively to identify things where we can all work together. For these reasons, I'd actually like to propose a call to SGA of what we might want to work and accomplish together as governance partners, and to think about issues or initiatives to work together this year. As the Chancellor continues to say, he believes in partnerships that will build and move our campus forward, which I think is really critical and important. So you can share your ideas with the SGA leadership or with me, and we can work on how to maybe make that happen this year. And in closing, I did just want to mention one kind of personal thing, and I'm sorry I forgot the senator's name, but last week somebody asked the question of, are you a stapler or a paper clip? Was that you? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I have been thinking about that all week, and I searched on that in Google today and found that there were 8,170,000 results on are you a stapler or a paper clip. It was a little bit overwhelming, and I didn't really realize there was quite a heated sort of philosophical, environmental, educational, and economical debate about it. So thank you for occupying my brain all week. But I did find out, one of the sources said that clipper people make good teachers, nurses, or sheep herders, and staple people make good vampire hunters and zombie slayers. So I thought about this for quite a while, and I sort of decided that after a week of thinking about it, that I'm of both minds, depending on the situation or mood. So I guess that makes me a sheep herding zombie slayer. But with that in mind, I wanted to just express that connection, that I enjoyed attending that meeting. I learned a lot about you, and I'm really hoping that you'll take that call seriously, that we can work on something together other than just agenda items, but work on an initiative for the year. So thank you.
All right. First off, I want to thank Speaker Nygren, Chancellor Gibson, and Chair Nelson for sharing their words. And I want to welcome everybody else here, both in person and online. And thank you for taking some time out of your night to listen to me ramble on for a few minutes. So I don't think it's very controversial to say that last year was difficult, especially for higher education. The university itself faced a lot of issues ranging from like budget issues all across the board to how we're going to teach online classes, and students suffered a lot during online instruction. It's just not as easy for most people to learn online, and our mental health suffered quite a bit in that environment, being isolated from our peers and not being able to get the same interactions that we did. And I think it was also very difficult, especially difficult for our first year students who didn't really get to experience a full-time, in-person college experience, which I was lucky enough to my freshman year. And I can say that I am beyond ecstatic that we're back in person this year. And I think that, you know, despite the problems that we had last year, student government was still able to accomplish quite a bit. We passed 43 pieces of legislation, which I think is a pretty good accomplishment considering all of those pieces of legislation were crafted and passed online. So despite that, we were able to still serve the needs of our students. We had a faculty and staff working group with several people from Common Council, facilitated by Dean Stock, that allowed us to move past some issues that we had our first semester and create recommendations and best practices for the second semester that I think allowed both students and faculty to feel more comfortable about the teaching environment and more comfortable about the way that we were going to proceed for that year. We also were able to get the Student Government Reserve up to $200,000, which has been a goal for a little while due to funding problems and enrollment issues, but thankfully, hopefully, knock on wood, enrollment looks good right now, and due to that and also due to some sweeps, we're able to get that money up there, which means that student government can, for the first time in 5 or 6 years, pursue different monetary things for student orgs that we could possibly think about and will certainly discuss over the course of this semester. But I think that the COVID pandemic has left student government with a bit of a clean slate. The old guard, as I like to call them, have passed on. The people who were leading the organization when I came here as a freshman have graduated. And the kind of disruption in leadership and disruption in recruitment that COVID-19 did to us, I think has allowed us to, and a rare opportunity to rethink the way that student government can operate and rethink the way that we can serve our students. In the past, leadership and direction in student government has been very siloed. Each director worked on their own thing. So the environmental director would work on their own thing, and the president would work on their own thing, and the speaker would do their own thing. And that's not necessarily bad, and we did a lot of good stuff with that type of model. But I think it showed its weakness during COVID when we had fights within our organization because of that model, and also heavy amounts of turnover and burnout over the past few years due to the amount of work that we have to do as students for this job, and also being students, and also paying rent, and also doing all the other things that are required of us to be humans. And this year, I think we can change that, work more closely together, delegate more, and use our fellow directors and executives and senators to more effectively serve our student body and hopefully avoid some of that burnout and some of that turnover that we have suffered in the past few years. And it's also been traditional that the president has not really set a direction for the Student Government Association, which has, again, its benefits, but also I think its drawbacks when, again, we don't have a unified vision or a unified goal, apart from the fact that we are always here to serve students. So in that spirit, I am going to lay out 3 initiatives that I would like student government to focus on this year, and I'd ask for all of your help to make these initiatives a success. The first initiative is going to be diversity and inclusion, and more specifically, the visibility of our diverse and marginalized students on campus. This has always been a goal of student government for as long as I can remember, at least, and I think we've done a really good job about that. For example, we were the organization that pushed for all gender restrooms on campus and successfully implemented those in most of our buildings. We passed Indigenous Land Recognition Statement, which is now a part of the university's operations. We have also worked across the university to, in general, increase the awareness of marginalized groups. But I think that there's always more that we can do, especially to make our students who don't necessarily always have a voice feel seen, which I think is especially important in a predominantly white institution. I had a couple of ideas for this. So number one, I'd like everybody, my executives as well as the senators here, to keep in mind that those groups who do not always get a voice here in every conversation that we have. And I know that's hard. We have a lot of conversations in this room, and sometimes they go for 6 hours. But I think that it is important that we keep their experiences in mind and how this would affect them, especially when a lot of them don't get a voice on this body. In every decision that we make, not only in this room, but in the meetings that we have with administrators, the meetings that we have with other students, and the ideas and implementation that we come up with to serve our students. I think we can also expand this idea to having themed months throughout the year. We do a good job with this, and this is where I got the idea. In April, with Sexual Assault Awareness Month, the entire university, us, several student organizations, the administration, all sorts of departments and offices across the campus do a lot of work to push that, increase the awareness of that across the campus. And I think that there is an opportunity to do that for several different months throughout the year, such as Native American History Month or Black History Month, or several of the other things that happen and several other periods of recognition that we can create. And that'll be a lot of work, and probably won't get off the ground right away this year, considering we're already halfway through September. But I think that if we start working on this now, I think we can get it off the ground this year and hopefully rolling into next year and create an institutional idea where these students can feel seen and feel like the university actually cares about the fact that they are walking around in our halls. The second initiative is going to be student government visibility and professionalism among the student body. So I don't think it's controversial to say that most students don't really know who we are. I think that they know that we exist. It'd be pretty hard to not know that we exist, but I don't think they quite understand the scope of what we do, the fact that we meet with administration monthly or even weekly sometimes, the fact that we control over $3 million in differential tuition and segregated fees. They don't know these facts. And that's not a failure on their part, I don't think. I think that's a failure on our part of communication and also getting out there among our students and really promoting yourself as a representative of student government. We haven't really done that before too much, at least not in my experience in the past 3 years. And I think that there's room to do that. So I'd be asking all of you to attend organization meetings, attend department meetings, attend even events that go on by faculty and staff. For example, several members of SGA went to the Faculty Staff and Intersexuality Alliance picnic last night. And I think we need to do more stuff like that. And that will, I think, make us seen as a more legitimate part of the operating procedures of this university by our students. And if they see us as a more legitimate part of the operating procedures, they will come to us more. Because if they think that we're more legitimate, they'll come to us, they'll be safe coming to us, and that will make us serve the student body better, because we can't exactly know what students want us to do if they don't speak to us. So that's an incredibly important thing. And there's a second part to this initiative, which is trusting our voices. And I'm speaking now to the senators and the executives, especially our newer ones, who are here now. And I was there once, when I joined SGA my first week on campus, jumped right in head first, and I was very confused and intimidated. I come into the room, and they're talking about segregated fees and the health and wellness complex and all these other jargon, and there's 100 million acronyms across the university, and I didn't know what any of this meant. And so it took me a while to get confident in my voice, especially in meetings of, say, the Common Council or administration, when the professionals in those meetings have 5, 10, sometimes even 30 years of experience on you. And that is a hard barrier to overcome. But I think that we need to walk into these meetings carrying the weight of the fact that we are a body that is given authority under state law to represent our students. We are a body who represents 7,600 people with the university, a university that's operating budget is over $200 million, a university that affects the entire central Wisconsin area and the people within it. And if you kind of carry that's a responsibility. But it also gives me a little bit of confidence in the fact that I have this authority, I was trusted with this authority, and I think that gives us the voice and the confidence to use that voice. You will never overcome in student government the experience gap between you and a professional. But that doesn't mean that you should not trust in your voice. And I would ask all of you to do that this year. And the third and final imperative, I think, is the largest and most complicated. And it requires some background as a result. So as I said, this is my third year in Student Government Association. I've spent 2 full years in governance. And as a result, I've been involved in a few conversations across the university. And I like to call it, we're always talking about little fires. How do we cover this deficit? Where does this department go? How do we reorganize this school? How do we have this budget model implemented, right? And, me being an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, very new to this whole shared governance university leadership thing, I took a step back and I was like, okay, why do we have all of these issues? And it's not a shocking realization. It's not hard to come to, but my view is that a lot of the problems that we discuss at the university, a lot of the conflict that has happened over the past 10 years has been due to the state and its treatment and its view of the UW system. And the more that I thought about that, the more I thought, why are we putting out all these little fires? we can just go straight for the fuel source. I think very long term, I think very big picture. So I started doing a lot of research over the summer. I met with over a dozen people and dove into budget documents and policy documents across the state for the past 10, 20 years, researching the problem that this has become, researching the political and funding history of the UW system, and I think most importantly, researching the student involvement of the UW system. And I found a few things. I doubt that very many people in this room would know that there used to be a thing called United Council. It was a shared governance body chartered with the University of Wisconsin system, given authority under 36095, much like we are here. They were an incredibly effective body. They started in 1960 on this campus, and they were the body that crafted the language of 36095, which is the Wisconsin state statute that allows us to organize on this campus. They were the ones that got student regents on the Board of Regents. They were the ones that helped the system save segregated fees after the Southworth v. University of Wisconsin decision. The state legislature was just thinking about making them optional, and the United Council fought to make them not optional. So the reason that we get paid to do what we do here is thanks to them. They were also the people that helped craft and implement the tuition freeze in the early 20-teens which has benefited us greatly. But sadly, they were so effective that the state decided to cut their funding source. Basically, the way that it was funded is every 2 years, every campus in the system would hold a student body-wide referendum to rejoin United Council. That usually passed. Usually, for most years, most campuses were a part of this. And the way that they were funded is every student from every campus that voted to join was charged a $1 to $3 segregated fee, which went straight to United Council for their operating budgets. They were able to pay people, which is why they were incredibly effective. The state government cut off that revenue source by making that fee opt-in. So over time, the United Council ran out of funding. It basically shriveled up and is no longer existing. And I'll circle back on that in a second. And I also thought of a different way that we could, as students, fight across the state to fight for our UW system. I've noticed that the biggest challenge for student governments is organizing statewide. I've been involved in a lot of statewide conversations with other students, and it is incredibly difficult to get anything done. It takes months because there is no organizing apparatus. So after I discovered that, I came up with 2 plans, and I would ask for your help in implementing these. Number 1, we could restart the United Council. I still have to do some research on this, read the bills, and meet with a few other people who were around in 2013 or 2014 when that body basically ceased to be. But from my understanding at this point, all it would take is a student body-wide referendum to rejoin the United Council. It would have no funding, but it would exist again. And I plan on going to every single 4-year campus across the state and asking their student governments to help us with this initiative. Because again, there have been dozens of conversations, such as appointing a student regent, such as the UW system presidential search that happened, and there was no student input on those processes because there was no statewide student organizing apparatus. The second part of this, I think, is creating a grassroots statewide organizing apparatus outside of shared governance and untouchable by state law. One that could organize thousands of students across the state to send thousands of postcards to the state legislature demanding that they support our system, to lobby with hundreds of students at Madison, to protest at the state capitol to demand that they support our system in the way that it needs to be supported, to protest on every campus in the same way. I think that we can do this. It's a tall order, I know. This is a lot of work. I'm not naive to the fact that this will be incredibly difficult to do, but I do think that it's valuable. As shared governance officers, as students who represent other students on this campus, and as students who benefit directly from the UW system, I think that it is our responsibility to protect the UW system and to fight for the Wisconsin idea across this state. Students have typically been some of the most politically active groups across the country, and that has not been the case in Wisconsin for the past 10 years. And I think that together, starting here, we can change that. Shared governance across the state, student body-wide shared governance, was born at Stevens Point. And I think that we can make it reborn here. This will require a lot of work, as will all the other initiatives that I've mentioned tonight, and as will the typical work that we have to do anyway, and as will being students, and as will paying rent and for food. But I know that together we can do these things. I have seen student government do a lot of good work in my time, and I think personally that I am looking forward to the most productive and the most successful year of student government in recent memory. Thank you.